Hi, this is Dan Whitney with the Whitney Law Firm in Towson, Maryland. Today we're going to talk about racial profiling, false imprisonment, and invasion of privacy in the context of being wrongfully accused of shoplifting. Now, of course, before I get started, all cases are different and past performance does not guarantee any future results. That is a disclaimer, and it's important to realize that. So, first of all, recently, a matter was resolved in which a individual who was wrongfully accused of shoplifting recovered a settlement. We represented him, and he recovered. It shook out to about $4,166 a minute for being subjected to what he was subjected to. And without getting into the specifics of the case, there's quite a few takeaways that are very relevant discussion points that people should be aware of as far as their rights when it comes to if you are wrongfully accused of shoplifting, what's going to happen? What are your rights? What should you do? What should you not do? And what are some things that may happen to you? So the majority of the cases I've handled involving people wrongfully being accused of shoplifting, my clients have been black. And it's really just ridiculous what the excuses are that come back from the shopkeeper after they get sued, and we say, okay, what was your justification for doing what you did and detaining my client and doing whatever other terrible thing that you did that you subjected him to with no legitimate basis? So in one situation, a black man had purchased, about my age, about 40, had purchased an item at a store, and he was given a box, and the receipt was put on the side of the box, and he walked out of the store, and security saw him, and I suppose their thought process was, well, we see a black person carrying a box. What else could have happened? We must have a theft on our hands. Because there was literally nothing else that he did to justify their actions, and he ended up getting detained and subjected to a significant amount of unnecessary interference with his life, which certainly caused him embarrassment and humiliation because this occurred in a public place. But if you think that's silly or ridiculous or sad, a recent case we just filed against a supermarket included allegations of, well, here's what happened. A woman and her husband had gone to a supermarket to get a few groceries for dinner, just a few things. And they walked in, there's a long line, and the wife says to her husband, listen, babe, why don't you, I don't know if she said babe, but she said, she told her husband what to do. She said, you get the stuff in the checkout line. I'm going to walk around and talk to our daughter, and then I'm going to wait out front. So that's what happens. She walks around and she's talking on the phone to her daughter, and she's getting ready to leave the store, and she's got her purse with her. And she's stopped at the front of the store by an off-duty police officer who says, let me see your purse. Let me see inside your purse. She says, no. He says, let me see in your purse. I think you stole something. And she says, I didn't steal anything, and you're not going to get in my purse. She says, listen, I see security cameras. Why don't you just watch the tape? I didn't steal anything, and the tape will prove it. So, which seems like a pretty reasonable suggestion if you're being accused of shoplifting and somebody's trying to look inside your personal belongings. Say, look at the tape. I mean, why would that be an issue? I mean, it's bad you're in that position, but to say just watch the tape, that'll tell the truth, that could take care of the whole thing. Of course, that would have been a very reasonable thing to do in the moment. Of course, that's not what was done. What happened is that a manager came out, and between the manager and the security guard, they begin to harass this woman, and her husband purchases the few items and comes over. And it turns into this whole thing that lasts for approximately 45 minutes, and they are refusing to let her leave. And she says, listen, what was your probable cause? What was your reasonable suspicion? Why are you stopping me? And he says, this is ridiculous. Apparently what was said is You're walking around with a bag and you didn't buy anything. Then he forgot to mention the part about she's black, which I'm sure that's probably what the real issue was. And she says, "Wait, so I'm walking around carrying a bag, and that's the reasonable suspicion. That's your probable cause. That's the basis that you stopped me." Yes, we think you stole something. You walked in and you walked out without buying. I mean, it's crazy, but these are the excuses that get made and that people have to face when they're in these situations. So they don't actually take her bag from her, but the off-duty police officer ends up calling the on-duty police, who show up, and she says to them, "Listen, am I under arrest? Are you arresting me right now?" And they say, we're not arresting you, but still the other two won't let her leave, the manager and the security guard. And so finally, after quite a bit of time goes by, the manager goes up to watch the tape, and the security guard goes with him, and the police are still there. And the security guard comes out and says, "She didn't steal anything," announcing it. And meanwhile, dozens of people are going back and forth because this is occurring right at the entrance and exit. So all these people are watching this couple being subjected to this harassment for no reason. And of course, it's obviously an embarrassing and humiliating experience to be accused of, stealing in front of all these people, knowing you did nothing wrong, and being very powerless in the moment. So then the husband says, "Well, listen, you saw the tape, can we go?" And he actually said no. The manager's now reviewing the tape to see if you came here this morning and stole anything. It's like, I mean, you can't even make this up, how disgusting some of this behavior is that people are obviously subjected to by those who are in a temporary position of power, at least. And so, of course, they check the tape, our clients wait longer, and finally they're allowed to leave because the tape, of course, shows that nothing was stolen. So then we filed a lawsuit. But before that happened, our client had actually written a letter. And she had written a letter and said, I think this was 2 or 3 days after the occurrence, she said, "I'm writing, this is what happened." And she sent it to the owner, to the management company, to I think 3 different addresses to cover her bases, which was very smart. And it was a preservation letter in part saying, preserve all the cameras, preserve all the evidence, which was exactly what you're supposed to do as soon as possible after the incident, because otherwise things have a way of getting deleted when they'd be helpful to somebody's case. So she sent the letter, and she also said, "I'm very upset. I want someone to call me." Days go by, no phone call. So eventually she looks online, she finds us, and we have filed a lawsuit. Now, the answer came back, and actually I have it right here. The answer came back as to what was the basis for the stop, and they actually said their reason was plaintiff was carrying a large bag. You can't make this up. Plaintiff was carrying a large bag. So everybody who's carrying a bag is at risk of being stopped. It's apparently a defense now to say someone was carrying a large bag and we're going to stop them. It's going to be a fun deposition, I can tell you that. So I'd say the takeaways from these situations are, if it happens to you and you end up getting stopped and you haven't done anything wrong, obviously you don't want to escalate the situation because that can cause things to get much worse. You may want to call 911 yourself to make a record of what's actually happening. I've had cases where somebody pulls out a camera and starts recording the encounter just to make sure, in this situation, the individual didn't know whether other cameras were recording it. But it's always a very good idea to do an Instagram live or a Facebook live or whatever it is live to capture the situation. One, to create a record, but two, so the other people who are behaving aggressively know that there's going to be a record of whatever they do, which may help to keep them from getting too out of control and causing serious bodily harm. But going back to one of the recoveries where it shook out to about $4,166 a minute, you might say, that sounds like a lot of money. Some of you may say, well, it doesn't sound like much money. But the point is, it takes into account the injustice of the situation, the wrongful accusation, the humiliation, the embarrassment, and the powerlessness that can be forced upon a person when they're put in a position where they've done nothing wrong, and all of a sudden these quasi-authority or authority figures are really taking their rights away to leave a situation. You're forced to stay there and deal with an oppressive situation through no fault of your own. It shouldn't happen. It's a disgusting thing. And when it does happen, you may very well be entitled to significant compensation. So I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching. Take care.